Hi there, my name is Troy Kinsey. Welcome back to our training series, Service Management Essentials. In this series, we discuss how to assess and mature service delivery and support organizations. In this particular module, we're going to create a roadmap and a project plan or schedule based upon the information we've gathered thus far. And this is where we use the knowledge that we've gathered in Module 3, OCM and Governance, and Module 4, How to Assess Service Management Maturity, to create a workable roadmap and plan. The key objective here is to create a roadmap that we can use to communicate the overall approach and high-level timeline across the organization. Now, we're going to then create a plan that we can use to track and manage project tasks and resources and forecast delivery dates. So let's get started. So before we begin, it's important that we make a distinction between a project and a program. So a project is a temporary endeavor with a defined scope, a set of tasks or activities, and specific objectives to deliver a desired outcome within a certain time frame and budget. An example of a project may be to mature a component, such as incident management or any other component for that matter, from a maturity level 1 to a maturity level 2 with clearly defined deliverables for each phase. A program, on the other hand, is a collection of related projects, activities, and initiatives, all having a common strategic objective. So program management, therefore, involves coordinating the efforts and management of multiple interdependent projects to deliver benefits that really can't be achieved by any single project. Programs are typically long-term endeavors that require ongoing governance and coordination. So in other words, there's no set end date. Now, our work to mature a service management department or organization, for example, might be considered a program. Now, as we'll discuss, our road to maturity will likely involve multiple projects taking place, often in parallel, with some level of dependency or at least relationship between each. So we can look at an improvement initiative or program as a collection of projects. As such, we can and should introduce standards across these projects. Now, the process of introducing these standards can actually start to take on the form and function of a PMO, or Program Management Office, if one doesn't already exist within the organization. Note that there are various forms of PMOs, and we plan on creating a separate set of tutorial videos on project and program management, and actually on how to set up an effective PMO. But for now, let's consider a PMO as a structure and set of processes that's been established to provide project teams and project managers with the tools, coaching, and guidelines they need. Examples of tools and guidelines might include standardizing status reports, scheduling templates, a set of standard delivery metrics, any number of things. PMOs also typically provide services to leadership and other parts of the organization. For example, consolidating metrics and reporting results across a portfolio of projects. Now, we discussed the concept of PMOs because it's important to drive for consistency and effectiveness when managing multiple tracks of work, as is the case within an improvement initiative. So even if an organization doesn't have a PMO, we can put into place some of the practices that are commonly managed by a PMO. Now, as I mentioned before, we're going to touch on some key concepts associated with setting up PMOs in another video. For this video, let's start by discussing how we can create a roadmap and a project plan that encompasses multiple tracks or projects of work. So constructing a roadmap. A roadmap is, or should be anyway, a clear and simple depiction of a logical sequence of related activities and rough, emphasis on the rough, timeframes for each. For service management improvement initiatives, we typically create a one-year roadmap and then revisit that roadmap to update or revise where necessary on a quarterly basis. Now, hopefully we've constructed a roadmap with enough due diligence that we don't have to make any major changes to the overall roadmap once it's been drafted and agreed upon. Now, in order to accurately depict even rough duration estimates, as we'll do with our roadmap, it's important that we clearly define outcomes and deliverables for each of the activities or projects. This is, of course, true for both roadmaps and project plans. Now, as we build out our roadmap, we should think carefully through the sequence of improvement activities and projects. So let's discuss some key considerations first. Number one, start small and build out. We're going to discuss an approach to improving individual components in the next module, Module 6, Improving Components. But in terms of approach, I typically follow this sequence when maturing individual components. One is create a pilot. This is the first stage of the process. Redesign. In this stage, the process is evaluated and a proposal for improvement and associated concepts are tested with a small select group of individuals. Next, baseline, maturity level 1. To achieve a maturity level 1, we work with a component owner, manager, leader to agree to a design, clearly defined roles and responsibilities, documented and easy to use processes and metrics, and a roadmap for continual improvement. All of this information is then captured in a comprehensive package or playbook. Now, we discussed maturity levels in more detail in the last module, Module 4. If you haven't seen that, please check that out. I'll include a link in the description below. MVP. So we consider maturity level 2 as MVP. At this maturity level, the playbook that we created for maturity level 1 is operationalized across the organization. Now, if you recall, by operationalize, we mean that everyone in the organization who is either impacted by, supporting, or uses the component or process understands who owns the process, how it works, why it works the way it does, how it's measured, and how we're going to continue to improve that component. Now, these are 3 high-level steps that we can take to improve components. This approach ensures that there is a discrete deliverable for each phase and that we're not attempting to just do everything all at once. Another aspect to start small is to ensure that we are not taking on too many tracks of work at once, especially at the beginning of the initiative, and I'm guilty of this. It's better to start with small successes than attempt to wrestle with large, unwieldy ones. Even though we're starting small, although, it's important that we keep in mind that every time we introduce a change into the organization, even after we've completed the deliverables, that change or those changes will reverberate. In other words, it's going to take time for the organization to adopt and absorb the change. Now, as we continue down the roadmap, please keep in mind that just because we've, again, completed a project or instituted a new change, it's going to take an extended period of time to absorb and adjust to that change. Now, there's a tendency to be overly aggressive when it comes to creating a timeline. As I mentioned, I'm guilty of this. We recommend erring on the conservative side as much as possible. So 3, establishing governance in OCM early. As you'll recall, we discussed OCM and governance in Module 3. We'll include a link. In building our roadmap, we're going to want to establish these early on, formal decision-making and communications, as well as a plan for OCM for continual engagement. Now, we recommend establishing these at the onset of the program as its own tracker set of tracks. We can identify and celebrate key milestones that we can then use throughout the initiative as opportunities to continually communicate and engage. Now, if you'll recall, OCM can and should involve both synchronous and asynchronous methods of engagement. So again, please check out the OCM video if you haven't seen it yet. So for example, we can establish training and workshop opportunities. We can also assign individuals as change champions to provide mentorship and respond to inquiries and suggestions for improvement. And it's important to continually ensure transparency throughout, of course, the life of the program and list various forms and means to communicate and engage. So 4, establish accountable owners. It's important to ensure that we are assigning clear, accountable owners. This includes assigning service owners for individual services, process owners for individual processes, and of course system owners for key tools and technologies. The good news is that we don't have to assign owners for every single component or service all at once. However, it's important that when it comes to improving individual components, it's important that we're working with the accountable owner of that specific component. So to be fair, it's really helpful for the owner of that component to participate in the maturation process. Now, for many organizations, the concept of a clearly defined service owner is fairly new. It's important that we at least work with 1 or 2 service owners up front at the very onset of the initiative, as they're going to be the ones who are actually going to use the processes or systems that we aim to improve. So it's useful to pilot with those service owners so we can obtain feedback. We can then start to assign more service owners and accountable processes and system owners as we start to address each structure, process, tool technology, and personnel-related component as the program evolves. Next, it's important to consider which areas are the most important to start with from an improvement perspective. So prioritizing fundamental components first. For most organizations, the most crucial or fundamental components are those associated with ensuring that there is a reliable mechanism for responding to end users in situations where a service is not functioning as designed, so incidents, and responding to inquiries and requests for assistance, service requests. So consider how components work together. Another consideration to keep in mind when drafting a roadmap is that some components can and should work in conjunction with each other and can sometimes even enable other components. For example, we can and should use information that we receive from incidents and service requests to guide which articles we should create or revise as part of knowledge management. So next is consider the relationship aspect. So lastly, when deciding on the sequence of project or improvement activities, it's important to consider the partnership or relationship aspect of the overall service management ecosystem. For example, service owners now, or they will be in the future, rely on the service desk providing them with useful information, such as types of inquiries and issues received about their service, so that they can then use this information to improve their services. In turn, service owners are, or will be, accountable for providing the service desk analysts with useful knowledge, articles, access, or tools to empower them to better address inquiries and issues for each service. Now, I find that it's helpful to start to pilot these relationships at the very onset of a service management improvement initiative. This can help set the proper tone that delivering and supporting quality services is not an us versus them endeavor, but should and will be a positive symbiotic effort. For more information on developing a roadmap, please check out my guidebook, Practical Service Management. I'll include a link in the description below. In this guidebook and our guidebook, we review the entire process for developing a roadmap based on the assessment of a fictional video effects organization called Gaslamp Productions. Okay, so now that we have created our roadmap, let's work on our project plan. So constructing a project plan. Let's review a few key points of a well-constructed project plan that are often overlooked. Please keep in mind that a project plan, unlike a roadmap, depicts more precise and accurate durations, associates owners with tasks, and can and should be used to monitor progress and manage resource allocations. It's these durations and task dependencies and the culmination of task estimates that really should drive the dates. The tasks outlined in the plan should be based on commitments by their owners to meet those delivery dates. Once we have a completed and agreed to project plan, we can and should adjust our overall roadmap to match our resource-loaded and more detailed project plan and not the other way around. As always, let's start with the outcome. So what are we going to need from our project plan? So we're going to need a reliable means to forecast delivery dates. We're going to need the ability to model the impact of adjusting tasks, durations, and dependencies. Regardless of how much we work to refine estimates, they are in fact estimates. So when a task or set of tasks take longer than originally estimated, we need to understand what this means to the overall plan. The ability to clearly track progress and, as noted, determine where we need to adjust tasks and our resources. The ability to view and model the critical path and secondary paths. So for those new to the concept of critical path, the critical path is the sequence of consecutive steps that represent the shortest length of time possible to reach the end of the project from where we are today. In order to achieve these objectives, we're going to want to create a plan that's easy to view and manipulate, create a plan that depicts clearly understandable tasks and task owners versus assigning tasks to teams or groups of individuals, for example. A structure that makes sense, and I typically adopt a top-down approach and try, as much as possible, to modularize, in other words, essentially group-related tasks. We're going to want to clearly note deliverables or zero-day milestones at the end of each collection or sequence of tasks so that everyone understands the definition of complete. We're also going to want to institute a change control process to formalize the proposed introduction of changes to the scope or timing of the project. So if the definition of deliverables is unclear, or if the plan's continually changing, the team's going to be continually tasked with attempting to hit a moving target, which isn't fair. Now, once we've agreed on scope and have constructed a plan and timeline to meet the project objectives, we should really do everything within our power to manage to the plan and subsequently use the plan as a tool to continually improve our efficiency and effectiveness as a team, so we can make sure that we're driving to that end state on time. All right, so let's discuss some structural concepts. So level of task granularity. A common question I'm often asked by project managers is how to determine the level for each task. So if tasks are defined at too high a level, then it can become really difficult to ensure that the task is or can be owned by any one individual, and thus difficult to estimate actual duration. But if the tasks are too low or too granular that they in fact appear to be almost action items, a project plan can quickly become too long and unwieldy and difficult at the best to manage. So I typically try to select tasks at a high enough level so that it can be made clear who owns each task and so that the task durations can be readily estimated. The best project plans tell a fairly coherent story with tasks that represent key activities that must be completed in order to deliver the associated deliverables at the end. Again, each task should be at a sufficiently low level that we can clearly identify a single owner. So while we're on the subject of tasks, it's really helpful to state each task in as few words as possible. So use active versus passive voice, and then use the same format consistently, such as using a verb subject format, such as document, incident, process diagram, or assign knowledge, process owner, obtain leadership approval, etc. So wherever there is an ambiguity, it's important that the definition of the task complete is clear. So using our examples above, what does assign knowledge process owner really mean or entail, for example? So how can we be sure that this task is actually complete? So is it sufficient to inform the individual, or does this task also entail sending an email to the organization or engaging HR? So we can always append notes to tasks. The important thing is to ensure that the owner for each task and everyone else is aware of what's to be expected so that the durations are clear and there's no surprises down the road. So duration driven. I mentioned before that the project plan should be driven based on durations and dependencies versus manually entered dates. So what do I mean by this? So this is a critical factor that I find a lot of project managers overlook. The moment that we start to manually enter start or stop dates into a project plan, we lose the ability to forecast effectively. Now, in an ideal world, the only date that we would truly want to enter is the project start date. From there on out, every task should either have a dependency on that start date or on other tasks or series of tasks that ultimately have a dependency on that start date. So we can then manipulate the durations to add any kind of buffer or buffers as needed. In this manner, if the duration of a particular task takes longer or shorter than anticipated, we can see the subsequent impacts cascade throughout the rest of the plan. In like manner, we can adjust the dependencies or durations of tasks or groups of tasks in order to view subsequent impact on the entire plan. This is really important as actual durations are going to change, so project managers must be able to view the subsequent impact of those changes downstream. And project managers must continually look for opportunities to shift and manipulate task priorities and at times assign different owners and find other ways of making up for possible delays. So task owner commitment. At the end of the day, the task owners in partnership with the project managers are going to determine how long each project is going to take based on the durations and dependencies. So it's the responsibility of the project manager to work closely with each task owner to set aggressive but achievable timeframes. We want to set a challenging bar, but on the same token, we don't want to frustrate teams or individuals because we've just set the bar impossibly high either. So once the team has agreed to the plan, task owners should be then encouraged to do their utmost to achieve the tasks within the time frames or durations agreed to, and continually inform the project manager as the project progresses, especially when things don't go as expected and they run into roadblocks or other challenges, which will happen. So project managers' accountabilities. Next, we're going to discuss the role of project manager in helping the project team meet their commitments. Essentially, the project manager should be able to use the project plan, as well as the roadmap, governance, and OCM structures that have been developed to manage to commitments. So maintaining a project plan. So now that we've created our project plan, it's easy to view and fully supported by the team, all the task owners and leadership. It's based off durations and dependencies, so as we work through each task, as those tasks take more or less time to achieve, we can quickly and easily see the impact of the overall timeline. Moreover, we can and should be able to model various options and opportunities as we progress through the plan. So what should we, or project managers, track each day, each week? We can and should use the governance forum that we've created to queue up status and address any challenges to either the timeline or quality of work being developed. Typically, I ask project managers to share the following on a weekly basis. So, what's been accomplished? Where are we today in terms of timeline, but also quality of work being delivered and the level of confidence and partnership across the team? Is the team working together effectively and efficiently, harmoniously? Or is there continued strife? what's working and what's not. So what do we need to do differently, perhaps? And we've talked about this in other modules, but it's important that the project manager and project team work together to devise, or at least attempt to devise, proposed solutions to issues as they arise. So a quick note on this, actually. It can be tempting for some leaders to provide project managers or project teams with ready-made answers instead of pushing the PM and the team to come up with their own. So these are opportunities to help PMs and teams learn how to work effectively together. So I suggest we don't take that challenge away from them. And lastly, what's coming up in the near future? So if certain tasks are taking longer than originally anticipated, what does the project manager and the team suggest we do to accommodate? What options do we have? What does the team propose to do to work our way through any challenge that we face? So this concludes Module 5. In the next module, Module 6, we will work together to use the information we've pulled together and have now incorporated into our roadmap and project plan to improve individual service management components and our overall ecosystem. Hopefully you found this video informative and useful. As always, thank you all for your support. Until we see you in the next video, take care, have a fantastic day.